Hello everyone, we are back to our studies of the mandible, and now we are going to deal with half of the mandible. And in this half of the mandible you can see half of the body of the mandible over here, and you can see the left ramus of the mandible. So the body of the mandible, the ramus of the mandible, and the alveolar process bearing the sockets for the teeth. And this body of the mandible, it has an upper border bearing the alveolar process, it has a lower border, and we would not be right in describing this as an anterior border because this is continuous with the opposite half of the body. In fact, the body is totally U-shaped, and the junction between the body and the ramus is taken to be an imaginary vertical line just behind the third molar tooth. So this is the posterior limit of the body of the mandible, and over here you are extending onto the ramus of the mandible. So the ramus actually is a quadrangular structure which has an anterior border, it has a posterior border, it has a superior border, it has an inferior border, it has this lateral surface, and inside it has a medial surface. And if you consider the body on this outer surface, you can make out that the central part over here is quite prominent, and this prominent is called the mental protuberance. So the prominence of the chin in the middle is the mental protuberance, and it is actually a broad triangular area. The base of the triangle on either side has small elevations which are called mental tubercles. So you have mental protuberance and mental tubercles. Now if you look at it from here, although this has been dug out, you have the mental protuberance and mental tubercles forming a triangular patch here near the midline. So in the midline you have mental protuberance, mental tubercles forming a triangular elevation, and beyond that you have an oblique line of the mandible. So this anterior oblique line of the mandible extends across the body from the mental tubercles obliquely right up to the anterior border of the ramus of the mandible. So it passes obliquely high up towards the ramus, and somewhere in the middle between the two premolar teeth you can make out that the body of the mandible has an opening foramen which is called a mental foramen, and this is sharp towards the midline and smoothened out and shallow upwards, and through this mental foramen you have the passage of the mental vessels and nerves. The nerve is usually pointing back upwards, so this part is actually beveled towards the upstream side. And on the body of the mandible, near about the center, you have the attachment of the mentalis muscle and fibers of the orbicularis oris. And apart from that, over the oblique line, more towards the center, you have the depressor labii inferioris muscle, and slightly posterior to it, you have the depressor anguli oris muscle. So these muscles are actually attached along this oblique line, and when you follow this oblique line to the sides of the three molar teeth, by the sides of the three molar teeth you have the attachment of the buccinator muscle. Now this attachment of the buccinator is covered by the buccopharyngeal fascia, and this buccinator attachment goes on to the part behind the third molar, where it is continuous with the pterygomandibular raphe, a fibrous band going up to the pterygoid hamulus of the medial pterygoid plate of the sphenoid, and that pterygomandibular raphe is actually the partition between the buccinator muscle in front and the inferior constrictor muscle behind. So this is all along this oblique line of the body of the mandible on the anterior surface. And on the lower border of this body of the mandible, you have the attachment of the investing layer of the deep cervical fascia, which after being attached along the lower border of the mandible splits on the inside to enclose the submandibular salivary gland. And again on the external surface of the body of the mandible close to the lower border, you have the attachment of the platysma muscle, and this platysma muscle is actually coming up from the neck, and it is continued over the face as the risorius to the angle of the mouth. So you have the attachment of the mentalis, the orbicularis oris, the depressor labii inferioris, the depressor anguli oris, and other slips of muscle called the incisivus, and you have the attachment of the buccinator muscle, and you have the attachment of the platysma muscle. And as you have the alveolar process over here and the alveolar arch, this portion of the mandible is covered by the mucoperiosteum of the gums. So just as you have the teeth, the sockets of the teeth and the roots of the teeth within the mandible, so also this entire part of the bone is covered by the tough mucoperiosteum of the gums. And further below, where you have the attachment of the cheek muscles, over here you have the gap between the gums and the cheek, that is the alveolo-labial sulcus. Over here there is a pocket or a recess between the gums and the cheek. Not only that, where you have the canine tooth, there the roots of the canine tooth cause an elevation, that is called the canine fossa, and over the incisor teeth attachments you have a depression. So this prominence is the canine fossa. So much for the external surface of the body of the mandible. Now if you come to the ramus of the mandible, on the ramus of the mandible, if you look at the external surface, you have an anterior border which is continuous up with the coronoid process. You have a posterior border which extends from the angle of the mandible up into the condylar process. You have a lower border which is continuous with the lower border of the body of the mandible, and you have a concave upper border which is also called the mandibular notch. Now this mandibular notch, through this mandibular notch from inside outwards passes the masseteric vessels and nerves, and to the external surface of the ramus of the mandible you have the attachment, the massive attachment of the masseter muscle, and within this bony attachment you can find oblique ridges. They are actually formed by the fibrous bands within the muscle fiber groupings of the masseter muscle. And again, as we have said, if you trace up the posterior border, you can find the condylar process of the mandible, and the condylar process has got a almost a spherical articular surface for formation of the temporomandibular joint, and this cap of the condylar process is called the head of the mandible. The articular surface of the condylar process is called the head of the mandible, and this is elongated transversely. Although it's convex in all directions, this entire head of the mandible is slightly flattened anteroposteriorly and elongated mediolaterally. So somewhat the axis is transverse and directed anterolaterally. So this is the head of the mandible. It is covered by fibrocartilage, and it forms the mandibular part of the temporomandibular joint. It articulates with the articular part of the mandibular fossa of the squamous part of the temporal bone, and it is separated by the fibrocartilage, by a plate of fibrocartilage, by a fibrocartilaginous disc within the temporomandibular joint. To the margins of the head of the mandible you have the attachment of the capsule of the temporomandibular joint, and to the lateral surface of the condylar process as well as the posterior border you have the attachment of the lateral ligament of the temporomandibular joint. So masseter and temporomandibular joint. On the anterior surface of the condylar process you have a depression which is meant for the attachment of the lateral pterygoid muscle, and this depression, in which you can actually put your finger, is called the pterygoid fovea or pterygoid fossa. Now if we come to the coronoid process, this coronoid process gives attachment to another muscle of mastication which is the temporalis. It is attached to the anterior border to the medial and lateral surfaces.